Thank you for joining us on the JudgeHub podcast. My name is Felix Chung, and I'm one of the regular hosts. Shay couldn't be here for the conversation today due to scheduling difficulties within different time zones, but he's here in spirit and in the editing booth. I'm happy to be joined by Emilien Wild today. He has been on the front lines of judging Flesh and Blood since the reestablishment of organized play in 2021, and he has judged other card games going as far back as 2008. He is also the current lead of the policy team. Welcome to the show, Emilien.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me, and hello to every Flesh and Blood judges.
Hello. So, Emilien, I couldn't think of a better guest to present on our main topic for today, which is an introduction to investigations. We did receive some comments to some of our previous episodes requesting some more information. But before we dive right into this, I would like for our guest to get to know you a little bit better. So, Emilien, can you tell us generally just a little bit about yourself, like an elevator pitch?
So, I'm a professional judge. I've been a professional judge for the last 10 years. I've been a judge for the last 15 years. Obviously, those numbers are bigger than Flesh and Blood Lifetime, so that means I've been judging for other games before, and I'm still judging for other games right now. And judging is what I do.
Wow, that's great. And Emilien, where are you from?
I'm from France, currently living in Belgium. I've been living there for the last 20 years.
Okay. I'm so fascinated that you are a professional judge. What does that look like? I mean, I guess just to start with, you must travel a lot throughout the year.
So yes, I'm mainly judging large events these days. I judge the occasional Armory, I judge the occasional ProQuest, Road to Nationals, these kind of things, but they are not what I mainly judge. I mainly judge things like Calling or Pro Tours for various games. So that means I have to go to there and travel. So traveling is a big part of my life, and a big part of my life balance with my family life and everything else. On top of doing that, I'm helping various editors on various aspects of their games. So anything that basically a store or a game editor or a game publisher needs me to do, I will be willing to do it for money. So I do translation, I help them with writing FAQ, doing customer service, helping on various projects based on my tournament expertise and the fact that I've been doing games for more than a decade.
Wow, okay. When you got into judging around 15 years ago, did you imagine that you would become professionally involved with games and judging and writing documents and all of this to this extent?
No, that was not something I imagined. This is not one of the things you have on your orientation chart during your school life. And when I started, I did not even realize that this thing existed.
Okay. Is this a path that you would say is common or even
No.
not common? No? Okay. Would you
No,
recommend it? Yeah.
I think there's something like 10 to 20 people who are judging, living from judging in the world, all game combined.
Okay. I see. So what's changed between judging back then and now? Like, you must have seen some differences between the way things were then versus here.
Yes, so a lot of things changed, but also keep in mind that when I started, obviously, I had a very limited perspective. Perspectives grow as you meet more people, and you get involved into more things. So what I experienced back then might not be what other people experience either. But I've seen judging for different TCG go through different phases, where it started more as a hobby, something you did a few weekends every couple of months, and doing for fun, to something where people could start to become professional out of it, going to shows two times a month or more frequently, and start getting money out of it instead of just product and promo. And then the pandemic hit, and that was the occasion for a lot of games to restart the organized play, but also rethink about their relationship with judges, and moving for a lot of games more back to the hobby part, where you have people who are strongly passionate about your game, who come for weekend to experience tournaments through a different way than players, but experience the tournament, where the experience is more fundamental that you are a professional who deliver work for play. Because as much as I like it, I mean, that's my livelihood. It was not healthy when too many judges were on that path, because then
Right.
you lose a lot of passion and a lot of community, which were a great part of the hobby, and that I hope that we have brought back into Flesh and Blood.
Wow. Okay. How much would you say you're on the road? Like, is it every week, or do you get a week break every month approximately? How
So
does
the deal I currently have with my partner is that I should not do international tournaments more than twice a month.
mm,
So that this is a balance that we found that works for ourselves. So that's the target I try to aim. Obviously, there are some months where there are more tournaments, some of where there are less tournaments. So this is more discussion and a baseline for discussion than a set limit.
all right. And what keeps that passion that you talked about going for yourself?
Challenges.
Yeah.
Tournaments are full of challenges. Every tournament, there is no point where you are like, okay, I know how to do this, so I can go into automatic mode and just do every time the same thing. That's not how tournament works. Tournaments bring hundreds, thousands of humans together. Humans are very unpredictable. Things happen, and also humans need personalized care, and they need to be told. Like you need to reach out to the actual person. You cannot really use a template blindly and just follow it. You need to adapt all the time. So this is a job where every tournament I do, I need to figure out what is specific about that tournament, what kind of problem can arise, how can I avoid them, and how I can solve them when they actually happen.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And you're never sure, be it a big event or a small event, if you're going to get a call or something that's incredibly challenging. So every event is exciting in its own way. Hey,
Yes, they are.
perfect. I I would like to move on and talk a little bit more about Flesh and Blood, but before I do so, our listeners won't be able to see the screen here, but Emilien has a very large cat playground beside him on his screen here. So I'm wondering, can you tell me about your family and especially the animals that you have in your house as well?
So for the animals, we have two animals. We have a dog called Naps, who was my mother-in-law dog. She passed away, and we took care of the dog. He's a very nice dog, but we had the chance that he was very well educated from the start. So we have all the upsides of having a dog without having any other downside. And the playground is Freya's playground. She's a Maine Coon, and she's been with us for a little less than a year. She's a very huge cat and a very huge playground, and she's very fluffy and very dog-like. So again, this is a very all-upside animal. On top of that, with my partner, we have two kids, Prometheus and Phoebe. They are 10 and 8, and they love board games, card games. So they occasionally come with me at tournaments to enjoy the tournaments. My partner did a few tournaments. She liked them, but not to the point of enjoying the whole travel thing.
Right.
So she do it more rarely than us.
All right. No, thank you so much for telling us. And please, if I don't remember to ask you for a picture of your cat, you have to post it into the JudgeHub Discord.
I will make sure of that. Please remind me,
Okay.
and I will be very happy to share a picture of the animals.
Excellent. All right. I'd like to ask you just a couple questions about Flesh and Blood, because you described that you are a full-time judge and you judge not just for Flesh and Blood, but for other games as well. So I'm curious about a couple things. First of all, why Fab for you as a judge? Like, even getting into it in, what was it, 2021 when you did?
Yes.
I remember that time. There were a lot of different games. Some were coming, some were going. You're not sure what's going to stick around. What made you decide to invest into your time and your effort into learning how to judge Flesh and Blood?
So indeed, there are some games that are released regularly, and knowing which one will stick more than 2 years is very hard. So I saw Flesh and Blood. I did not pay much attention to it because, as I said, it was one out of many. But I have a very good friend, my best friend. She's a judge as well. She she was judging with me on another game. And during the pandemic, she told me, "Hey, look at this game. I think that what they are planning to do as organized play is very much something that you might enjoy." So I did. I trust her, and I went to that. I talked about the game to a couple of friends. We had this thing in Belgium during the pandemic where you were allowed to socialize with a very small number of people as long as you kept into a bubble. So they were my bubble. We are allowed to be with 4 people, and they were my 4 people bubble. So we started to look into things we can do together, and one of the things was, hey, let's try Flesh and Blood. So because I'm not gonna judge a game I'm not playing. I don't think you can do that and be a good judge. You need to be able to emotionally connect to the game, to emotionally connect to the people, and that will also inform your rulings. So if I want to judge a game, I'm gonna do it seriously and learn to play the game. So we ordered a few cases of Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising, and we started to play. So that whenever, if I like the game, whenever organized play start, I would be ready and I would be able to go to tournament organizer and say, hey, I see you're trying to start Tournament of Flesh and Blood. I know the game. I'm a player. And I also know how to judge. Can I help you? Can I do something for you? So that was the plan. And that plan was successful. So I knew the game. I went to the very first tournament organizers and I was like, hey, do you want me to judge for you? And once organized play started to be prepared, we did a few test tournaments together. It went well, so they were ready so that when they started to organize the first callings, I was on their short list for being a potential head judge. Then the fact that the US was having tournament organized play, but their borders were not open yet, meant that the very first callings, I could not attend them, so we had to postpone some of our plans on that regard. But eventually I was able to come to callings and start teaming and a judge at callings because, again, I had that day one knowledge of the game and day one knowledge of how to run a tournament with more than a few hundred of players.
Yeah, no, what a story and what a journey from then to now. Thank you for describing that to me. So I would like to just go a step further, just thinking about the way the Flesh and Blood judge community was back then compared to today in Q1 2024. From your perspective, as someone that's been there from the very beginning, what has been some of the big changes or the evolution that you've seen in the Flesh and Blood judge community?
So to stick it to Flesh and Blood, it's been a growth more than a change. From day one, Flesh and Blood has that chance to have a community who is extremely passionate about the game, extremely respectful of each other, who understand how to meet a challenge and how to do that gracefully and working with others. And we have that in the community. So obviously we have that in the judge community because we are part of that overall community and the judges come from the players. So it's been more growth, a bit more organization, because at some point when you have a group with more than a dozen of people, you need to have some kind of organization to make sure that what we do is actually productive, that things are actually fair. And the people who have been from day one involved into that, people like Klaus, for example. Klaus started as a judge when there was no organized play, no judge program, but he started to organize things, started to organize online conference, on-site conference, these kind of things. And those people are now in charge of the judge program, plus some other people who joined us along the way. So that's been more of the growth itself. If we talk more about evolution of the judges program, like multiple games from before Flesh and Blood. When I started to judge, it felt very much like how Flesh and Blood is today, a very much hobbyist thing, something that you do because you enjoy the game, you enjoy the tournaments, so you go there to experience the tournaments, but in another way than players. But you are going there because you want to experience them, you want to feel something. Then, because of the needs of some other games, there have been some professionalization. That's when I started to do this as a job. I like many other judges because you started to be able to judge every month, twice a month, these kind of things, and you were actually paid real money instead of just promo and packs. So this became a job. But this being a job took a toll on the way that people were judging because it became more, become more focused on making a living out of it, which requires some difference in mindset to be sure you're staffed on every tournament, these kind of things. And we lost part of what made judging healthy and interesting. So when Flesh and Blood started, it's organized Paint to Judge program. Bringing back the hobby at the center of the judge program was something that was essential for a lot of us to make sure that we had an healthy judge program again. And so we are back there, I believe. We are more in a position where, yes, some people can live out of it, but it's no longer the goal. The goal is more to make sure that we live all of this tournament together.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for that perspective as well. I'm just so fascinated as someone that's only been judging for 2 years myself to hear some of your perspectives about, how things have changed recently, but also how things have changed in the long term. And it still has, at least for Flesh and Blood, it has some of that grassroots organic growth feeling, at least as far as the judge community is concerned, that I've seen. So yeah, hopefully that continues. Okay, let's move on to our next topic. Just quickly to touch on your work as the head of the policy team for the Flesh and Blood Judge program. Can you just tell our listeners what the policy team does?
So policy team, we do the same thing but what the rules team is doing basically. Rules team is taking care of the comprehensive rules. We take care of the three other documents that are related to policy. So the tournament rules, the document that tell us how to solve it when a player does a problem, and the same thing for casual games. So we have these three documents, and what we do is we centralize every feedback we get. So from the judge Discord, from JudgeHub, from conversation we have at tournaments, every piece of feedback we get, we centralize it. We make sure that it's wrote in a clear way where we describe what is the problem, which part of the document caused that problem, and eventual suggestion that we may have. And then we bring it to LSS. And then LSS, so Josh, Klaus, and their colleagues discuss that with the different people who are involved into the different problem at LSS, and they come to solutions and they decide to implement or do not implement some changes based on our suggestion or based on their own discussions. So we are more like a communication between the judge community and LSS, that people who actually tailor the document yourself.
Right. And those key 3 documents that you mentioned, could you remind me what those are?
So we have the tournament rules and policy that describe what a tournament look like from a player and judge perspective. We have the procedure and penalty guide, who tell us what is suggested to judges as a way to fix problems when they happen during a tournament. And then we have the casual procedure guide, which is the same thing, but on a more condensed way so that it's easily used by someone who has less experience as a judge.
No, perfect. Just to me, not being part of the policy team, it seems very complicated to balance all the different feedback because so much of policy could be seen as subjective. Versus, I imagine if there's an issue with the comprehensive rules such that someone could gain infinite life or draw infinite cards because there's an issue there, then that's fairly, or that's more black and white. How do you, I guess, what's your approach to handling getting all these feedback whenever a new version of the policies do come out?
So basically the documents, they are not comprehensive. They don't cover all the cases. They focus on what is common and what is grave, because these are the two places where judges will need the more insight. The common one, because obviously as those cases happen more often, this is the thing that judges will do more often. The grave one is because when something that is very serious happen, we want to make sure that the judges have all the guidance they can have to actually solve those cases. So some of the feedback we receive is not a bad feedback. It's just not neither common or grave. And because we want those to keep those document manageable, we will not put any guidance in the documents on that. So there is indeed some objective part, because what is common, what is grave, is something that LSS decide, and that's based on the cases we bring them. So that's also why it's very important that if you encounter something where you felt you did not have enough guidance, you let us know, because if any people let us know, we can go to LSS and say, hey, we think that many judges encounter this issue, and it's not covered clearly in the documents. So this is subjective, and that's why there is a conversation between us and LSS and us and the community. And then how to solve things. The documents contain things that have been tested, usually by judges of callings of Pro Tools, things that they do and work well. They are able to let us know based on, to tap into their experience and tell us, hey, this is the kind of things that after careful deliberation between us, we figured is a fair way to solve those issues. And then we just put that into policy so that we can use that wisdom to guide our decisions. There will be many different valid ways to solve a given decision. That's why what we put our recommendation to the judges, we tell them, hey, if you do that, they have been tested and that work and that will solve your issue. However, we acknowledge that every game is unique, and you might be in a situation where you can find a better solution. In that case, you have the freedom as a judge, you're empowered to actually apply that solution. But if you're not sure, if in case of doubt, what we provide you works, so you might want to first consider that.
Right. No, thank you so much for that explanation. I feel like we need a whole other episode to delve into policy in the future, so I hope when that time comes, you'll join us again. But we'll have to move on here into our main topic here, which is investigations. So one of the things that we hear frequently from especially newer judges is requests for more information about investigations. And Emilien, I'd just like to ask you a simple question to start off this discussion. What is an investigation?
So an investigation is figuring out what is happening. Most judges do investigation multiple times per rounds. They just don't realize it, because there is this idea that an investigation is a cheating investigation. It's an investigation where, after having the first elements, what comes to my mind is, oh, that player might be cheating, and I want to delve deeper into that. But that's just a subpart of investigations, and the method you use for that subpart is the same as the one you use at every call. So judges are usually much better and much more experienced in investigation than they think. They just much rarely encounter a cheating investigation, because let's be clear, most players are honest. So we most often don't need to delve into that corner.
No, thanks. And I guess when you say that people often have more experience into investigations than they think, I'm thinking even when a judge has to take a call and a player says, hey, I drew too many cards, there is still a little bit of an investigation component, even for something quote unquote simple.
Oh, there is very much an investigation, because you will come, player will tell you a first statement, which is, I drew too many cards. And then what you will do, without even thinking, is check if it is true. Check how many cards they have and how many they should have. Then you will try to understand, how did that happen? So you will start asking questions. You will start checking visually the board game to see how that player drew. And then you will come to a conclusion. You will double check that this conclusion is correct. You will be, oh, you already had one card at the end, and then you drew 4 at the end of the turn. That's one too many. I understand that. I'm going to ask you again to be sure that I have it correctly. And then once I have a true and tested theory about what happened, I will check in the documents what I'm supposed to do here. Most of the time I will know by heart, but if I'm not sure, I'm going to double check visually in the documents or ask another judge. And then I will apply the prescribed solution, which is a full investigation from A to Z, and you did the many things without even necessarily noticing that this is something you that you have a plan on how to do that and the skill that you actually acquired on how to do an investigation.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what you've described is you've taken a situation that comes across frequently, I would say, in Flesh and Blood. I've drawn 5 cards at the end of my turn in Flesh and Blood numerous times, and I've had to call judges on myself and cause some heartache for Shay, who judges those events frequently. And you've outlined a framework basically for even for a basic situation, but could also be applied to a more complex situation of gathering the facts, testing your theories, double checking, etc. So I guess there's a lot to digest here. So if I could just maybe outline another scenario for you, and maybe we can just break down step by step
Of course.
your thoughts as you go through those scenarios. So let's say, for example, again, there's a tournament and you're called to a table. There's one player that calls and says, "Hey, my opponent, their cards in hand mixed with their arsenal, and I'm not sure that the card in the arsenal now is the same card as it was before." So, what is your thought process if that situation were to be presented to you?
So, very first, for that kind of scenario, I can give you what are my initial reactions. What are the things that go through my mind when I encounter that case? But an investigation is something that is extremely personal. That depends a lot on the context, on the discussion you can have with players. And usually, if you are in a multi-judge tournament, you will have a first responder, and that person will be also part of the investigation. So it's
Right.
really something that I will do by myself. I need to involve at least 2 other people, the players, and sometimes more, such as spectators or the judges. So I will go through the initial reaction rather than doing the full investigation and letting you know if I disqualify the person or not, for example, because
Right.
this I cannot go beyond the first steps because I
Right.
need access to the players. That's also why we don't really do remote investigations or comments on investigation that have been done by another judge, because we cannot go past that initial feeling and get actual facts and go to an actual valuable conclusion. So going back to your scenario, what I immediately think is I have a player who made a mistake that is grave. Why is it grave? Because they made a mistake that cannot be verified by the other player. We are in a situation where the player did something where we cannot restore it correctly, which is always a problem that comes from the fact that Flesh and Blood is a game with some hidden information, which is
Yes.
part of the depth of Flesh and Blood, but also means that if you mess with hidden information, it's become very hard to fix. So this is a situation where if I'm a player who has bad intention, it's a very good cheat for me because the judge will not be able to restore it properly at first glance. Fortunately, we have things that we can do to fix it. But this is something where basically the player has a huge payoff for what they did. They did it intentionally. So that's the first thing I have in mind is, that player has a huge payoff, and it's also something that can be very easy to perform because you just need to put your hand on the table and pick it up, and then suddenly we have no clue if the arsenal was initially here or not. So it's easy to not be seen. So we're in a situation where you have a huge payoff. It's very easy to commit. These are the kind of situation where if someone is dishonest, they will try something. We usually have those 2 elements. So that's the very first thing I have is, that might be cheating.
Right. So you're establishing motive. I think of those detective novels or TV shows. The detective's always
Yes.
like, "What's the motive?" So you're outlining the different situations of what the payoff could be, what someone's intentions could be. Is it, is there a potential advantage? I think that's the wording used in some of
Exactly. Potential
the documents. Yeah.
advantage and how easy is it to commit if you think about it on the moment, because
Right.
most people are good people. Most good people can make bad decisions when they're put under stress.
Sure.
So if we are in a situation where the player is put under some stress for some reason, they can do something that they would not do if they were thinking straight, because most people see themselves as good people, and we don't do things that could harm others or harm the community we are part of. So most people don't do that, but if they are under stress, that might happen. So that would be the next thing I'm going to look at is what is the context? Is that player under stress or not? So which table is that? Which round is that? Or used are they to play those kind of tournament? And are they winning, losing? Is it unclear? Most people are not put under stress when they are winning. Most people are not put under stress when the game is still playing out. But having those extra context will allow me to think, hey, are we in a situation where a good person could have done something bad? So that's the next thing I'm gonna figure out. Because here, what I'm trying to do, because I thought, oh, that might be cheating, is to look for things that would prove me wrong, that would make me change my mind. I will never look for things that would make me think, yes, I'm correct, because if I do that, I will find things, because that's the way that the human brain is working.
Right.
You will always find confirmation bias. I'm trying purposefully to not do that. I'm going to try to disprove my initial theory that that player might have done that on purpose. So I'm going to look at what is the game. Is this player under stress or not? If that player is not under stress, I will dismiss my theory, and then I will move to that was most likely an accidental mistake. We're going to fix that according to the document. So most likely, I'm going to ask the player to reveal their hand. The opponent is going to choose a card. That will be the arsenal. If I do it this way, I'm pretty sure that the player could not gain any advantage, because the opponent will be the one doing that. Then I will look to things like how long that card has been in arsenal. If it's been here for a long time, I'm going to look at the card in hand to see if there is a card that would be extremely bad to have an arsenal, but extremely good to be in hand. I'm going to look for things like, hey, this is my theory. I think that player is cheating. Is there, like, if I look at the end and none of the cards seems like a good card to have in hand right now, they are all pretty mid, and being in the arsenal or in the end will be the same thing. Why would the player cheat if that's the same thing if they have it in hand or the arsenal? If there is cards that could be played only from the end, only from the arsenal, then that's going to be more difficult. I will look to, how did that card was put into the arsenal? Was it put at the end of the turn? Was it put by a bow, for example? These kind of things. And then I will try to gather based on the strategy. This is why I said playing the game is extremely important, because I need to be able to understand the various matchups and how good is a card in the arsenal or in the end based on those matchups. If I'm not sure, because I'm still human, I cannot play all zeros against all the matchups. If I was able to do that, I would be winning Pro Tours instead of judging. That's a lot more money in that. So often what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the players themselves. That's why I said I need to have a chat with them. So I will most likely take them apart and then ask them some questions about strategy. And I will be very careful to be open-ended in my questions, so they don't get a hint about some hidden information or their opponent plans. But I might ask the other player, hey, what would be a great card for your opponent to have in hand but not in arsenal? Or what do you think your opponent could have, if they did that intentionally, what do you think they're trying to achieve? How has been the game so far? Was there any tension between you? These kind of things. Who is winning? Because again, I might be missing something. I might be seeing that the player are more live than the opponent, but the player can tell me, no, I'm winning. I'm about to fatigue them. So there could be things I did not consider. And I'm going to do the same with the other player, asking them the same kind of question. If out of your hand you could choose any card to be in your arsenal, which one would be the strongest? And I'm going to check if their answer makes sense, because these are the kind of question where a player who did something really bad might try to cover their track and answer me nonsense. So that's the kind of things I'm going to gauge is, based off my understanding of the game, what is going on here, and can I dismiss my first reaction, which was, that might be cheating.
Right. No, you've taken a very simple example and you've given us so much good information, good questions about some further information that could be gathered about a situation which doesn't have a lot of information to go off of really on the face of it, but you're just picking apart the different context, the different motivations that people could have, how people could behave in different ways. This is all incredibly useful. And I did just want to highlight, going back to something you said, going back to your team of judges, making a call like this, even though it's simple, what happened potentially is very daunting, because of the stakes that could be involved, because there is a potential of cheating um, conduct here. And it's important to highlight that at your big events, your tier 3, tier 4 events, you as a judge, you are going to have a team. If you're not an experienced judge like Emilien, you're going to have someone like him on your team in the head judge, support judge, appeal judge role, so they can step in for investigations just like this one, once we start talking about things like cheating. I mean, when do you typically ask your floor judges to escalate to leadership? Like what nature of investigation or that?
So basically, if after asking a few questions, like 2 or 3, spending 1 minute, the judge has the feeling that there might be more into that they will need to take more time. This is when I would like them to involve one of the support or judges. The reason is that after they bring us, we will have to redo the investigation. We will have to ask the question, to gather the facts again. And if they spend 5 minutes to go to a conclusion that, hey, that might be too complex, I need a second person to help me on that, and we come again, we will redo those 5 minutes plus more. So we're going to delay the whole tournament. So as soon as they have the feeling that this is not simple, that might be multiple solutions to explore here, this is when I would like them to involve someone else. They will still stay part of the investigation. The head judge will be the one who's going to direct the investigation. So we have a central point who takes the decision on who we talk to, what question we ask. But that head judge should involve the floor judge in that, because there is more in 2 brains than in only one. The fact that the head judge, who is one of the most experienced judges in the room, is here does not mean that the other judges don't have some things to bring. They were the first one who were involved. They got the first answers. They have a feeling on the situation, and all of that are very precious to us.
Right. So going back to that example, then, if that were to happen at a tier 3 or tier 4 event where you were the head judge or the support judge, would you expect the floor judge, if they took that call, to basically take this to you pretty quickly because of the stakes, that there could be cheating involved and all of that?
So for that kind of situation, because as I said, we're gonna do a pretty involved fix to fix it anyway. As even if we believe that this was an honest mistake, as is the most likely, they will need to double check that ruling with another judge anyway. So because they will need to involve another judge, as soon as they identify, I will need to involve someone. They could ask a few more questions to get a feeling on what is going on, and or likely they think that it was a simple mistake, or that might be something more nefarious behind that. But after that, they will need to involve someone anyway. So I don't see the need for them to spend too much time at the table. After 1 minute and 2 or 3 more questions, they should have a first impression of this, and then bring it to team leader or directly to one of the orange shirt, and they might as well just go to an orange shirt, because the investigation will need to be continued by the orange shirt.
Right. No, thank you so much. I have another example here, and this is something that's quite frequent, is discrepancy in something like a number of counters or life total is pretty common. So let's suppose that you're called to a table and the players can't agree on how many Steam counters there should be on something or how much life someone should have. Pick your favorite of those. How would you approach that from the investigation point of view?
So those kind of calls are indeed very common, and they are ones where we have to provide an answer. We cannot just say I don't know or tell them to put to meet themselves in the middle. That does not work. We as judges we are given the responsibility at this point to provide an answer.
Right.
That answer might not be the correct one because we were not here, and if we do not get all the information from all players, if some information was destroyed, misremembered, or they're just conflicting, we might end up to a situation where the answer is not the correct one. And that's okay, because our goal in that situation will be to be the best what we can. I mean, the players already failed. At this point, they cannot reproach us who are not involved into that full game to not be able to do better than them. They should be the one who are able to do that correctly in the beginning. We will do our best.
Yeah, we play pen and paper. We can't undo. So
yeah, exactly. We can't undo. I cannot go back in time to observe what happened.
Yeah.
I will need to base my decision based on what you two are gonna tell me.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna tell that to the players. I will let them know that hey, I'm gonna do my best, but what you will get is my best. You will not get more than that, and you will need to help me to achieve a result. And if we fail, all three of us to find what was the correct one, you will get what seems to me the most likely answer, but the most likely does not mean the correct one. So let's go for what is the most likely. And then again, I will keep a close eye on how much does that matter? Obviously, every mistake matters, but some of them will close the game instantly, and some of them will give you an advantage on the long run. The first situation is a situation where I will be more looking for is that cheating, and the second situation I will not start with that in mind, but will keep at the back of my mind that hey, if something changes, I might have to reevaluate my evaluation. So players are very. If you ask them exactly what happened for the last 10 turns, they will not be able to let you know that because that's not how human memory works. But you can start to jog their memory by asking them, hey, what did you play last turn and why? Obviously, why will always be in private, not in front of their opponent. But these kind of things that can help them, because they don't take action at random, they take them because that makes sense strategically. So if you focus more on the strategic aspect, they may be able to explain you what they did, why, and then you can figure out some information about the past of the game this way. You're gonna look at life totals and ask, hey, at this point, you attack for that much. That would only make sense if you had that many counter on your weapon. So is it possible that it was the correct number at that point? And then you will get a yes or no answer, and they will tell you no, it's because I play that pump instead, and this kind of thing. So you will use all information you have, so life totals, asking the player what they did and why. Why did you block for that much? Why? Because that might help you to understand what was their life total at this point. Do you announce your life totals when they change? Oh, you do not? You should. That prevent exactly that kind of situation we are in. Oh, you do. So what was the last life total you both agreed on? These kind of things. You just have a conversation with them. And once you figure out what maybe happen, you go with that. And sometimes they are very different conflicting stories. You have no way to know which one is a good one. And you're like, okay, this is the one that seems. But from my experience as a judge, this is the kind of game I've seen the most often. I'm going to believe that this is what happened. It might have been differently, but I have two scenarios. I have to pick one. I'm going to pick this one because it's the most likely to me. I might be wrong, but this is the ruling you're going to get.
Yeah, for sure. And as you pointed out, going back to the beginning, it's the player's responsibility to maintain the game state. You coming in trying to repiece Humpty Dumpty after he already fell off the wall, it's a daunting task, right? It's very, very difficult to do. So thanks for all those tips. I think approaching both players to find the point of latest agreements is a great tip. Hopefully that's that's an accurate place and the point in time is well known, so that can be a good foundation to rebuild and figure out the correct situation. So we've talked about a lot here. I'd like to just cap this off by circling back. I'll be your student here, Emilien. I'm going to go back to the first situation and scenario. I'm going to try to describe how to apply the framework that you just explained to me. And if I get anything wrong, just correct me, okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the easy scenario. I'm going to set myself up easily here to, again, the most common call that I have ever gotten. It's, Judge, I've accidentally drew 5 cards instead of 4 because my sleeves stuck together or whatever the situation is. I do it all the time. So I'm called to a table, and I see the player there said, Judge, I accidentally drew 5 cards. I saw all of them. What do I do now? So step number 1 is to identify the situation. So I see that there's been an infraction. Potentially, the game is not as it should be. The player should not have 5 cards. So then, okay, you do a quick check, right? As you described, like what are the player's motivations and things that I take into account are which player called me. So in this case, usually when I've seen it, it's the player that drew 5 cards that did it. So I'm thinking, okay,
if it's the opponent, then the situation you may approach the situation much differently.
Yes.
Because players should be used to have only 4 cards in hand. Having a 5th one and not telling anyone is weird. So you will indeed approach the situation differently based on who called. So one of my first questions would be, that question to the players is, hey, who did notice that?
Yeah, exactly. And then you go into a fact finding. In the situation I described, it's pretty easy. There's a player that has 5 cards in their hand, and there shouldn't be. But you're still going to want to understand the board state. You're still going to have to understand who's winning, who's losing. What table number you're at. Are you near the top tables? Are you at the bottom tables? And this is second nature, basically, right? Like as a judge, you know all of this based on where you are in the room.
As I said, most judges are very good at investigation. They just think that these investigations are something very scary, very complex. Most of them are not, and they do investigation every round.
Yeah, exactly. So then for something like this, then you'll also take statements from the players as well as part of your fact finding, right? It's like, hey, did you notice anything else? Like, what's the reason for drawing 5 cards? It's like, oh, my sleeve's stuck. Just to make sure that there's no warning signs, right? Like, you just want to make sure everything makes sense to you.
Exactly. And you involve the other player as well to make sure that this is a conversation between all 3 of you and that you show that you care about both of them and not just the one who called you.
Right. So luckily, in this situation, it was fairly straightforward. I've gotten the statements from both players. Everyone agrees, honest mistake. So now it's time to deliver the ruling. It's like, okay, this is a hidden card error, for example, or whatever.
In this case, that will be a looking extra card because you did not mix 2 different sets. There was only one set, and that set show you a card that you were not allowed to. So you're gonna more going for the looking extra card, but that's why you're gonna look at the document to say, hey, what is the wisdom that LSS is providing me on how to solve that?
Yeah, of course. So then you find the infraction, you deliver the ruling, and then just one thing we didn't mention is you do offer an appeal as well at a large event, and then you're good to go. You offer your time extension, all
exactly.
Of that stuff. So
the way I do it is I explain just the player. Hey, based on what I understand, this match or looking strike out infraction. Luckily, it's a common one. It's going to be very easy to fix, and the penalty will not be too high. I will explain the players. This is how I want to fix it. The penalty I want to give is this one. Do you both agree on that? Do you want a second opinion on that? Do you want me to clarify something? Right. And then based on that, I just close the call and move to my next judging activity.
No, thank you so much. I feel like I've learned a lot in this conversation. I do have one last question about investigations, and this has to do with getting better at investigations because, as you said, they are very subjective. It's very difficult to accurately convey, why the outcome of a certain investigation was this at this event, but it was another outcome at another event because there's all of this information that the judge team is gathering that could be different from one situation to another. And that information is not always recorded. And arguably, a lot of it shouldn't be because of confidentiality and we're gathering a lot of information about people's thoughts, and if there's higher penalties involved, then there's people's privacy as well that has to be considered. Like, some people may find it difficult to improve on investigations because they don't know how to get better at them because of some of those considerations. So my question to you is, how would you advise for people to practice these skills and learn from other people around them?
So, as you mentioned, it's very hard to tap into someone else's experience because we will not share what an actual investigation entails because it involves multiple people, and we have to also respect them. The fact that the investigation might have been a stressful experience for them, it might have bad outcomes for them, they may have been disqualified. We don't want to put extra pressure on those people because even if what they did was wrong, they are still people that we need to respect. So we cannot really describe you, oh yeah, at that tournament I disqualified that player for that reason. This is the lies that they told me, and this is all I noticed they were lies. What we can do is tell you what are the kind of structure we apply to ourselves, because they are very subjective investigation. It's going to be based on, do I trust you or not? Do I think that based on my game experience, this is a likely strategy, or what you're doing is strategic nonsense? And do you know that this is strategic nonsense, or are you just clueless about how to play your hero? These kind of things are very subjective. So to remove any bias that we have, or at least to temper them, because you cannot never really remove your bias, we put some structure. And that's what I mentioned about, hey, I'm going to look for some things and not the others because I know that I have bias that would taint my judgment too much if I was just asking questions without thinking about what I am trying to achieve here and keeping in mind the fact that I have biases. So we have structures that we're going to apply, and you can talk about, hey, what kind of structure we use, or what are we looking for and why, or do we use the different context element, or likely is it that a spectator is actually someone who can provide you useful information or not? How much do you trust players' memories? These kind of things. These are things we can discuss, even if we cannot discuss a specific case. So this is something where we, as a judge community, could chat with each other at tournaments. We can produce articles, we can produce presentation. Investigation is one of the common topic I present on because I have the experience of doing investigation, including some investigation under hard pressure when they involve pro players, when they involve people who are actually, my decision will have an impact on their livelihood. These kind of things, I cannot just go nilly-willy asking random question and then doing, this seems likely, I'm going to go that. I need to have something a bit more structured than that. So I'm very happy to share those kind of situation. But the best thing you can do is after every call, try to think about, hey, did I just ask the question that came out of my head, or did I have a plan? And why did this question was the one that came to my head? What was I trying to achieve doing that? And most often you will notice that they were actually good questions because you know what you are doing. You're a judge. You know how to play this game. You know how to solve this solution. So what you're doing makes sense. It's just that you did not think about why you're doing it and how. And sometimes you will notice that, oh, that question actually was useless. That was a loss of time because whatever the answer they would give me, that would not change my mind in any way, because I just asked it because I did not want to pull the trigger, and I was trying to stall and delay my actual decision. So I started to ask questions without them having. I mean, they are good questions. It's just that they don't provide any data that I can use. So why do I bother with them? You can also think, wow, I had an idea of what was the most likely. Why was I afraid to pull the trigger to tell the players, hey, I'm gonna have to disqualify you, or to tell the player who is very upset because they think their opponent cheating, no, I don't believe they do. Why was I afraid about that? And then thinking about what could I have done differently, what will I do next time differently to make myself more trusting into my judgment. Or maybe I was too trusting into my judgment. I did not consider about trying to disprove what I was certain of. Why did I was so full of myself on that? What could I do next time to make sure that I challenge my assumption to make sure that my ruling is more fair? So try to be a bit more reflective about the way you do your investigations, because again, you do investigation 3 times around without even noticing. So think back about them, and that's even more effective if you are in a team with another judge, because, for example, your road to national was 40 or 50 players and you were 2 judge team. In that case, you can ask, hey, can you shadow me when I take a call? And then we can discuss about which question I ask, why, and what would you have done differently, so that I can learn from you and you can learn from me.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, that attitude or that philosophy of just continuous improvement and just self-reflection is very powerful, and I think it'll serve you well for all aspects of judging, including investigations. It certainly helped me a lot. And just a plug again for the investigation seminar that you give in the in-person conference and also online as well. Very, very worth it, where we can go into these concepts in even more detail. So if you do see it coming up in a conference that you're able to attend, highly, highly recommend that presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's been about an hour, Emilien. Like, the time has flown by. I feel like I do need to take some time to digest everything that that I've learned here today. I'm just wondering, though, I have just a little bit more space in my brain for one more tip, especially from someone that's been judging for 15 years, like yourself. So I'm just wondering, do you have just some general advice or life lesson or knowledge or wisdom that you can pass on for our listeners to reflect on?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the growth is something that is very core to what I trust, I believe. Um, it's not always easy to. It's also when you encounter something that is challenging, that you feel that you did not rise to that challenge the way you wanted to have some negative emotions, to feel bad about yourself. And it's important to be able to reflect on that and think that this was just one of the challenges that you learn from, and that you are now much better prepared for the next time that challenge appear, and that you are also much more prepared to share that experience, that failure that you had, with other people, so that they can learn from it and they don't have to repeat the same mistake that you did.
No. Thank you. And before we sign off here, do you have any acknowledgements or shout outs that you would like to give to anyone?
As I said, I cannot thank my friend Anik more than, because she's the one who put me in touch with Flesh and Blood, and Flesh and Blood is the game I prefer to judge by far. I really enjoy the community. The community is like none other. It's so much mature, so much more respectful, and LSS is taking great care of us. LSS make us feel valued and respected, and not just a cog in the machine. And that's just amazing. I just love that game.
Excellent. And I promise this is the last question. Do you have any social media, or if people do want to reach out to you or get in touch, what is the best way to do that?
So we have an email address. I'm gonna find it right for you for the that's policy at fabjud.ge. So a judge with a dot between the D and the G. So that's the best way to contact us, because this way you can make sure that I will read your email, and if a bus strike me, someone else will be able to read your email. So don't reach just to me, reach to the team. It will be much more efficient. On top of that, I'm following the Discord daily. I read everything you post on it, because, as I said, part of my role is to report it to LSSC in one way or another.
Great. Well, thank you so much once again, Emilien. My name is Felix Chung, and on behalf of myself and my co-host Shay Ashby, thank you for listening to the JudgeHub podcast.
Thank you very much.